Hey everyone, welcome back to Glass Router's Business Interruption webinar series. So last week we talked about the period of restoration, and that, if you just as a reminder, is the time period that a policy will pay for a business interruption loss. And basically what it boils down to, if you recall, is that business owners are really looking for a long period of restoration, and while the insurance carriers are arguing for a short period of restoration. This week, let's talk about the actual measurement of that loss during that period of restoration. So in a typical policy, what you'll see is some language to the effect of, we will pay for your net income to the extent you earned it, plus your continuing normal operating expenses. And generally that stands to say that we will pay for your normal level of profit plus your level of fixed expenses that continue during a loss period. So some other language that commonly shows up in many policies is actual loss sustained. So that actual loss sustained comes from terminology that's directly within most policies. And that terminology generally states that we will pay for the actual loss of business income that you sustained from a covered loss during the period of restoration for the necessary suspension of your operations. In a typical scenario, many times you use the historical earnings of the business in order to project what would have happened during a period of restoration. However, in making those projections for that period of restoration, many times accountants will project increases or decreases based on the factors on the ground. And it's important to understand some of the different policy portions that impact how an accountant may look to measure those projections and project that net income and continuing expenses during the loss period. So it's important to understand that the actual loss sustained is not necessarily a two-way street. There's some language that comes from case law all the way back in Hurricane Hugo in the 80s in the Carolinas. And what that case law essentially said was that the policies would not pay for increases in your net income and continuing expenses due to post-loss favorable business conditions. That's actually some language that's migrated into newer policies and has actually shown during the period of restoration or extended periods, post-loss favorable business conditions is generally not something that is covered under many of these business interruption policies these days. So post-loss favorable business conditions, what does that actually mean? So if you're one of the few businesses that are actually doing better as a result of coronavirus, say you're selling webcams or toilet paper, and you have an increase in business as a result of coronavirus specifically, if you were to have some sort of covered loss and you had to shut down, well, that increase in business as a result of your coronavirus specifically would not be included in the measurement of your actual loss sustained. But the flip side may not necessarily be true, because while post-loss favorable business conditions are included, most policies actually will exclude loss of use or market loss. So a likely example of market loss would be a situation where your insurance carrier is likely to argue that even if you do not have physical damage or loss of your facilities that cause you to shut your doors, you would have suffered those financial losses anyway. Because, say, in the case of a restaurant, even had your doors still been open, the dining public was not going to frequent your establishment anyway. So this is where an accountant may be looking to split out some portion of the damages between what a covered cause of loss is or a non-covered cause of loss. And this is important because as an accountant, I need to be prepared to actually argue whether the different causes of loss contributed to the financial damages or there were some other factors. So this is where business owners really need to be on the front foot to guard against this market loss argument. What we're really looking to understand is the supply and demand. So had my business been open, I would have had the demand and my customers coming in the door to use my services. So if I'm, say, a salon or a barber shop, I know that my customers are really looking to go out and get haircuts, but my doors are shut. So I'm really looking to write down any sort of cancellations, if I have customers that are calling me, asking me when I'm going to reopen, any sort of appointments, anything to indicate that had my doors been open, my customers would have been there. And that really insulates you a little bit against some of the market loss arguments that you're likely to hear down the line.